Welcome to the March 6, 2018 Selectmen's Meeting at 6 p.m. held in Selectmen's Chambers at 272 Main Street in Townsend. I'm going to call the meeting to order and have a roll call at this time, please.
Sulicio present.
Gordon Clark present. Just so, and correct me if I don't have the right, Cindy King is the Selectmen's representative to the search for the superintendent. She is attending that night, so this is just basically a meeting for mandatory hearings so that we can keep basically government running. So we'll be scheduling a regular meeting. We'll be handling a full agenda in the future, but just we had spent money to advertise these meetings, so we didn't want to waste it. So I will be taking the chairmanship just for tonight, and then thankfully for everybody, Cindy will be back to do it next time. So at this time, would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Carol, do we need to wait to exactly 6:05, or can I don't know what time it is exactly. The clock
It is 6:04 on my clock.
All right.
Yeah, so that would be fine.
Okay. So at this time, I'm going to announce that the meeting's being tape recorded. Is anyone else tape recording in the audience here? Okay, the answer is no, so it'll be all on cable access. And the chairman's additions or deletions, I don't have any. And that's that. So we'll move on to our first hearing, 2.1, 6:05 p.m., public hearing referencing Gilchrist Road petition to respan 6 existing poles and install 2 new poles. So we have the checklist in front of me here. I've announced the hearing, and do we have a hearing notice? Do I need to read that? Okay. Sue, if you could take care of reading that
Sure.
notice. Thank you so much.
Legal notice, Town of Townsend, public hearing. The Board of Selectmen will conduct a public hearing on Tuesday, March 6, 2018, at 6:05 p.m. in the Selectmen's Meeting Chambers, 272 Main Street, Townsend, Massachusetts. The purpose of this hearing is to consider the petition of Fitchburg Gas and Electric Light Company, a company incorporated under the laws of the Commonwealth, for the transmission of electricity for lighting, heating, and power. Respectfully ask permission to construct and use a line of transmission with the poles and other fixtures necessary to sustain and protect its wires upon and along the public ways in said town as follows. Gilchrist Road, respan 6 existing poles, that should be poles, and install 2 proposed new poles between 9 Gilchrist Road to 40 Gilchrist Road, Townsend, approximately 935 feet south of South Row Road and approximately 1,685 feet north of the Townsend-Lunenburg town line as shown on sketch plan number 603-L. And to this end, your honorable board is hereby requested, after due notice and a public hearing is provided by law, to grant to your petitioner and its successors and assigns a location for such line agreeably to the provisions of Chapter 166 of the general laws and all acts and amendment thereof. Also for permission to place and maintain underground laterals, manholes, handholds, cables, and wires in and above or intersecting public ways for the purpose of making connections with such poles and buildings as it may desire for distributing purposes. It is suggested that the poles be located substantially as shown on a plan filed herewith marked Fitchburg Gas and Electric Light Company, proposed pole locations in Townsend, plan number 603-L, dated 1/17/18. Signed Board of Selectmen, Cindy King, Gordon Clark, Sulicio.
Thank you, Sue. Next we'll have, in our packets here, we have a certified list of abutters, and with the names and addresses, and that they were notified within 300 feet of abutters subject to the process here. And we also have in the packet from The administrator for the assessors, Jody DeShanes, a certified list of abutters. And so, let me just check that off for checklist of abutters. And notice has been mailed. And Carolyn, thank you for taking care of all that. And then the next is to review the application that we have in our packets here. I don't have any questions at this time. Do you, Sue? Or do you-
No.
Okay, thank you. So we find that the application is in order. And then at this time, I'm going to ask anyone in the audience, query audience for support. Anyone at this point would like to speak on behalf of support for this petition for the telephone poles? Is there anyone? Not having anyone recognized at this point, we'll move on to number 6 on our list here, query audience for any objections. Does anybody wish to be heard as in the form of rejection to this petition? Not hearing it at this time, I will move on to 7. To discuss, approve, or deny application for placement of poles and wire locations. Sue, do you have any?
No, I just have a question.
Sure.
Are we supposed to collect the names of the people that are attending?
We can have a sign-in sheet. The poll hearing's not necessary.
We don't have to?
But I can circulate one if you'd like.
No, I
If you're
don't know. We
comfortable.
usually always do, but
Yeah.
Just
I
that
can
we
just
we
print
have
one
a
and
certified list of
circulate.
us.
we have
the
the cert
abutters,
of the
so we know
abutters.
that
That's
they-
all we really
they
need.
can-
Okay, Carolyn, that's fine, I guess. Yeah.
Do you have anything to add, Mr. Crowley, at all?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, I would be willing to consider a motion to approve.
Is there anything specific you need in the motion?
The check.
The check was received today, so you don't have to worry about it.
Okay. Is there anything in the form of the motion for Sue that you would like?
You can
Okay.
say as simple as approve the petition.
Okay.
It's incorporated therein if you want.
I move that the board approve the petition for the Gilchrist Road petition to respan 6 existing poles and install 2 new poles.
Second. Motion's been made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Let the record show unanimous. Thank you, everybody. At this time, at, you have a time? That clock's saying.
6:10.
At 6:10, we're closing the hearing on pole relocation on Gilchrist. Thank you, everybody, for your assistance in that. Moving on to 3.1, appointments of officials, personnels. Appoint Allison Thiel, I hope, to the Meeting Hall Gallery Committee effective March 6, 2018 through June 30th, 2019. Do we have a motion?
Una minuto. There you go.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I move to appoint Allison Thiel to the Meeting Hall Gallery Committee effective March 6, 2018 to June 30th, 2019.
Second. Motion's been made and second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Let the record show it's unanimous. Just give me 1 second. 3 spots to sign, Carolyn? I'll just give that to you so we don't lose that. That's important. Moving on to 3.2. Appoint Joan E. Daigle to the Council on Aging Board for a term effective March 6, 2018 to June 30th, 2018. Do we have a motion?
I move that the board appoint Joan E. Daigle to the Council on Aging Board for a term effective March 6, 2018 to June 30th, 2018.
Second. Motion's been made and second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Let the record show it's unanimous. Moving on to 4.1, meeting business. Review, comment, zoning board of appeals, mandatory referral, special permit accessory apartment. Sue, do you have any questions or concerns?
I'm all set.
I'm all set. I would entertain a motion if you,
I move that the board send a thank you for the referral and no comment.
second, a motion's been made and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Unanimous. 4.2, review, comment, planning board, mandatory referral, referencing site plan review, open space development. Sue, do you have any questions or concerns?
No, I don't.
Neither do I. I would entertain a motion at this time.
I move that we thank the planning board for the referral and let them know we have no comment.
Motion's been made, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Let the record show it's unanimous. 4.3, review signed proclamation for Eagle Scout Award. Decide what member will be present at the March 17, 2018 ceremony. So do we normally read the proclamation now and then sign
Can.
it?
We have another Eagle Scout.
It's, I tell you, for a small town, it's really amazing
It is.
how many people are there. That's awesome.
I have a proclamation, whereas the Boy Scouts of America offers an environment and association which fosters good citizenship, honesty, integrity, and diligence in our younger people, and whereas the practical aspects of scouting provides training for our youth in survival, independence, and a sense of loyalty to our country, and whereas Devin Carter joined the Boy Scouts Troop 10 of Townsend, Massachusetts, has completed the requirements for, and having been examined by an Eagle Scout Board of Review, was found worthy for the rank of Eagle Scout. And whereas Devin Carter has, as his Eagle Scout project, Signs of Safety, which is aimed at making the Nashua River Rail Trail a safer place for all who use it. And whereas Devin Carter is presently a senior at Neshoba Valley Technical High School in Westford, Massachusetts, and whereas the approach to and attainment of the Eagle rank is lengthy, detailed, and difficult, and requires intelligence, tenacity, determination, and a highly motivated desire to succeed. Now we therefore, Cindy King, Gordon Clark, and Sue Licio, Selectmen of the Town of Townsend, Middlesex County, in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, do hereby proclaim Saturday, March 17th, 2018, as Devin Carter Day. So it says the Town of Townsend, and the Town of Townsend urges all citizens of Townsend, together with their family and friends, to join us in honoring the Boy Scouts of America and in saluting Devin Carter for his achievement.
Second on making March 7th, 2018 Devin Carter Day. All in favor?
Aye.
Carolyn, if you could just, I'm going to sign and Sue signing. Could you please let Cindy know that we need to sign? And I don't know, usually we have a little more advance notice. So I know it is St. Patrick's Day. I don't know if anyone else has interest. I would make myself available, but I don't know if we want to ask Cindy too or not, or how we want to hear. Just it'll probably be the last one I'll ever do, but whatever everyone's comfortable with. Okay. So it's signed. We just need one more
If
signature.
Cindy doesn't want to, I can probably do it. Okay.
Unless they have a preference there. Sometimes they have a preference, but if you could just get to us, all right? Otherwise, Sue's
You can
available.
hold it, and you can-
All right. Thank you. 4.3, moving on to 5. Wow, this is great. We're already up to better than 10 o'clock ones. 5.1, work session, town administrator updates and reports. F1 fiscal year 19 budget update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was going to be a more detailed update until I got a phone call this morning from the superintendent of schools and the business manager at North Middlesex. For the past 2 weeks, we've had meetings with the school districts. The first was the public hearing on the budget, which was good news because the trend was in the right direction. Our assessment had originally been projected out at an 11.5% increase. At the public hearing, it went down to 7.44%. Still well out of range for what is sustainable, but that's what it was 2 weeks ago. A week ago, at the tri-board meeting, the assessment was rolled out with a revised budget, and for the town of Townsend, it was 4.99%. And at the time, I had been carrying 4.8% as a plug in the draft fiscal 19 budget. So it wasn't a far reach to be able to come into balance at the 499 projected. So I went to the FinCom meeting last Thursday and worked with them over the then most recent version, which was version 44 of the budget, and was in balance at that 4.99. The school committee met last evening and certified their budget. As you may or may not be aware, when they certify their budget, they have the ability to come back to the table and reduce the number, but they don't have the ability, once certified, to go back and increase the number. So they generally try to certify high and come back down after they go through a couple more rounds of consideration. The expectation going into meeting last night was that they were going to certify at the budget numbers from the tri-board meeting last week with our assessment at 4.99. They didn't. There was apparently a great deal of discussion, some of which was pretty uncomfortable with the consideration of everything that goes on in schools, what's needed in schools versus what funding is available. And they ended up certifying a budget somewhat higher than the budget that we had at the tri-board meeting, and our assessment came in $156,000 higher at 6.54%. When I spoke with the superintendent and the business manager today about that, they were concerned that it was going to be upsetting news. I let them know that I understand it's a process and that they're going to be getting back at the budget again. They're scheduling for a meeting next week. They're going to look to bring the towns back in at the table again next week. They expect that the number will come back down again. They don't know that it's going to be less than the 4.99, which was the one that we had a week ago. Some discussion a week ago was that the 4.99 was the high number and it would likely come down. So we've got a bit of a curve that's been thrown here. So I was going to be going in detail over the most recent version of the balanced budget with you this evening, but it's not balanced. It's 156,353 out as of tonight. I don't expect that a lot of room is going to be made in trying to come into balance until we see what they do at the next meeting next week. So my hope is that this time next week we'll be in a room with all of the other towns and the school committee and have a frank discussion about what the sustainable numbers need to be. In as much as this is a difficult number for us, it's an even more difficult number for the town of Pepperell. They're having their own budget challenges this year, and as a percentage of the budget, they carry a greater percentage of the operating budget assessment because their enrollment is higher than ours. So I know that the number that they got today is even more unacceptable. So once we know the schedule of when that meeting is going to be, I'll make certain to get to you pretty quickly. I think it'd be most helpful if we can have as many faces and voices at the table the night of the next tri-board meeting.
Do you know the date of that? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Not as of yet.
You'll let us all know.
Yeah, they're working to schedule it right now.
Thank you.
If, worst case scenario, this is the number, it's going to be a different discussion between me having built the budget and you needing to sanction it before it goes off to the finance committee. It will be a discussion about either additional cuts from within the operating departments inside the town government, or, as has been the case in some instances, putting forward the school budget as a contingent vote. And it goes forward as a contingent vote that we fund what we believe is the reasonable number with whatever that delta is above being an override. I don't think anybody wants that to be the case, but it's a difficult situation when our budget, general government budget, when you take education out and you take two pieces of debt out that I think deserve a separate discussion. Sue and I have been talking about them for a little bit now. The West Townsend Fire Station and the pumper truck were borrowed inside the budget. It predates my involvement. It's just a curious bit of work because we were retiring some exempted debt in almost the equal amount of the yearly payment the same year. So some of the logic as I go back and read the file was that it would have been in place of that retired debt, that it would slide in and not impact the operating budget. But So if you take the school expenses out, and those two pieces that I think deserve discussion, our general government budget is going up by less than 1%. In fact, less than 0.1% as of last week. So any consideration, I think, of trying to find another $156,000 within that budget, I think is going to be a painful exercise. And I think some of the pain needs to be articulated to the folks at the school committee so they understand what type of an impact another $156,000 would be, as it is now, just for the operating assessment for North Middlesex. So that's not the debt that everybody's going to be experiencing, but just the operating assessment. It's close to $600,000 increase. That's not a sustainable number. So.
Absolutely, sir.
What I've found helpful in the past has been to try to demonstrate graphically for every 100,000, this is what the impact would be. So like for 156,000, were they to, get their increase, what does that mean to our taxes in terms of an average
If it was an override.
household?
Right, sure. I agree.
Those kinds of things for all of the things that you just mentioned?
Sure.
Okay, I just think it's an easy way for people to equate and help make a decision, so for every 100,000 evaluation, it's going to go up $20 or whatever it might be.
Sure. I do have...
I'm not saying I agree with
Understood.
going
Oh, understood.
Okay.
Understood, but more information, the better. I do have a spreadsheet that I shared with the Finance Committee that I've been carrying around for a number of years, that it is as simple as plug and play. You plug in the expected annual increase, and you carry what your total assessed value is, and it'll generate that at a $100,000 home, $200,000 home, and a $250,000 home, just to give you the annual projected increase. It's
But I
not-
think it's good to have it for each one of those different things
absolutely.
that can impact the change.
Absolutely.
For example, as you said, the high school, what have we got coming in
Right.
for that, or what's projected for that? Because that's kind of a done deal,
Yeah.
that is a done deal, versus the budget if that were to be an override. And then West Townsend
Sure.
as well. That would be helpful. Thank you.
Sure thing.
Thank you, Sue. Mr. Kryler, so into the board here is that, as I look at this here, we've done all our homework here in the town. I mean, if our budget's only going up one-tenth our budget here, and they're looking to go up, what's their percentage here now? I have it written down here.
The assessment, our assessment right now is 6.54%.
Okay, so
increase.
6.5%. And I just think it's ridiculous to even be talking about an override, because people have just got their bills, and they supported it for the override there. So now they're getting, in their taxes, this year they're paying for the school. They want 6% here, and I just saw, which I can congratulate the superintendent on, they just got almost $700,000 for our green school down the money. We just approved to give them almost $1 million over the next several years for the solar farm on the roof. We're leasing space to a school that's not even down here, so they want 6% plus all this additional income. Thank God that we have, I don't know whether it's for proper insight, we addressed our out-of-control health care to make it a little more sustainable. If we had not addressed our uncontrollable health care through collective bargaining, working with the employees, we'd be in a terrible spot right now. They need to do the same thing down there. There's going to be a lot more discussion. I don't think I'm going to go on and on here, but I just find it unacceptable that we're living on food stamps here almost, and they need to work with us. We're a team member. That's all I'll say, all right? So we're going to have some in-depth conversations, and hopefully everyone will work together, but it's just unfair to the town here to ask us. They need to do what they need to do down there. And so that's the end of that. That's all right? unless you want someone else to.
Yeah,
Sure.
I didn't make it to the all boards meeting. What kind of discussion took place there? I mean,
It was as you'd expect. Pepperell took the lead. Mark Andrews, the town administrator, talked about the Green Communities grants that the town of Pepperell has brought to the benefit of the district. Not unlike the projects we've got teed up here to do air handling units and lighting projects for the betterment of the school district. It's going to reduce the energy bills for the school district on the capital infrastructure in the town of Townsend. He was making the point that the town of Pepperell, are putting in several $100,000 of money that they could spend elsewhere, but they're putting it into the school. So that's the soft open. And then members of the select board spoke about the fact that they can't afford even what was the lower assessment. Theirs was 5.25% to our 4.99. They talked equating it to police officer salaries, highway salaries, and what type of an impact each $100,000 in assessment means to their bottom line of their budget. They're not balanced, and this is putting it in the wrong direction. Town of Ashby had one rep. He spoke about his objection to discussions that we should be funding education as though it was to take the place of parenting. So it went down a really weird track for a little while, but you had some comments from some staff. You don't know what it's like and what we provide for services in education today. The emotional, social state of a lot of the kids that we see today versus perhaps in years gone by. And he heard that, I think, differently than other people in the room did. And he made some statements that people took some exception to. I spoke about the fact that I had been carrying originally 3.5% because that's what the model for the Collins Center called for. When I heard some of the distress that they were in, I had bumped it up in my first couple of versions to 3.8%. I communicated as much to Joan and let her know that that was more than we would feel comfortable doing likely, but recognizing that they're in some tough situations there. Their numbers are going down in student population, but that doesn't necessarily translate into decreases in costs yet, because while you may have had 22 kids in a class and now you only have 18, that doesn't mean you can cut the teacher. You still have to have that teacher. So they've reconfigured classrooms as best they can. Because they have some number fewer of kids, that doesn't mean they can turn some of the lights off or heat to some lesser degree in the wintertime. So they don't realize the economies yet of those reductions. So they're in a really weird spot. They're getting less funding on a per pupil basis, but they still have the overhead costs. So I understood that. Explained that the 4.99 that they were projecting would be a very difficult hit, but that I was prepared to come to the Board of Selectmen with the budget balanced at that 4.99%. There's a lot of discussion about the school resource officer and safety. And a comment was made by one member of the staff that the position hadn't been filled, and was it necessary to fill? Because that's an $80,000 budget item. The chorus of responses likened it to having insurance and thinking I can go without insurance this year because I didn't have any claims last year. In today's day and age, it's a necessity. So it did get put back into the budget. It was initially considered as a cut. I offered the thought that while it's newsworthy and it's tragic and it's frightful to see the things that we see in terms of school shootings, we also need to recognize that the system is broken the way we fund education. And while it's not as obviously tragic, we have a slow bleed that goes on when we don't provide enough resources to educate our kids, when we don't provide a rounded enough education to treat our kids in today's age. And it's a different age. Kids are coming into the building different than they were 20 years ago, whether it's because of societal failures or whether it's because of the advent and increase of technology that makes it easier to do hateful and hurtful things. I mean, it's a different world today. And while we can sit and kick each other under the table, which we do, about, well, if you need that much, then we can't have people back here in town working on roads or working, in the town hall. And the system has been built to create that tension between us locally, because the more we fight against each other locally over very limited and scarce resources, the less we're focusing on the real issue, which is the fact that the only one thing that the Constitution of Massachusetts mandates that the state fund is education. The only one thing. None of the other stuff the state does is required constitutionally, just education. And it's the one thing that they're not funding. And ed reform took place in 1993 through 95, and everybody thought it was the greatest thing, and it was, because it provided a level playing field. But that formula hasn't been adjusted now in 23 years. It's been tinkered with a little bit, but it hasn't been meaningfully addressed. And the disparity that it creates is obvious when you start looking at some of the data, and the fact that very wealthy communities are getting significant amounts of aid, and in some cases, less wealthy communities aren't getting as much.
Well, that gets into the formula.
It absolutely does, and nobody understands. I mean, David Bunker was an aide to a rep who was on the education committee, and he was one of the only ones that understood how that formula worked. And I don't know where David is these days, but I would guarantee you there's not a soul in the Senate, in the House, that fully understands how that formula works. And the more we spend time fighting locally and not addressing the bigger issue on the state side about getting equitable funding from the state, the more generations of kids go by. Each 3-year cycle that we fight, there's another group of kids that have gone through the high school, and they're out in the world. So I made those points and said that I can appreciate how difficult it is on their side of the table. Don't think when I say that this is too much money that I'm heartless. But we have two sides of the table we have to work on, and instead of fighting with each other all the time, we really should be standing side by side and looking at the state.
Well, the reality is that I don't think that any of us should have to make a choice between educating our children and public safety, for example. We should not have to make those choices. I agree with you that that there's work to be done perhaps at the state level. However, reality says to me we have a difficult enough time getting people within the town to volunteer for little town things. And this comes back, I think, and I'm going to swing it right back to education, because I think that one of the things that has changed over the years has been nobody in the schools has the courage to teach civics and civic responsibility like they did perhaps when some of us were children. They're afraid that the teacher's going to be talking politically, and therefore they don't touch it. But what I see are kids that aren't understanding, and it's not just the kids, it's the generation under mine that don't understand how things are done. So I can't see people in our town lobbying the state because I don't think they understand what happens and how that all works. You understand because you've been in government for a long time. So these aren't easy things to solve. They're not easy things to solve at all.
I agree. I've known this for a good number of years, and that's how effective I've been. Nothing's changed.
Well, it's like one person can't make it happen. One person can't make it happen. I mean, and yet you see all kinds of things that if they were my choices at the state level, I might not spend the money on some of them. But on we go. So, I mean, this brings us right back to, I have plenty to say about the the high school budget, but I'm going to hold off until, are we going to meet next week? Is that the plan?
That's the plan,
Okay.
yeah. Joan told me that they're working to pull a
So
date
when we
together.
talk on the budget next week, and I would appreciate having that little visual,
Absolutely.
maybe we can throw it up on the,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So that's the Town Administrator's update, 5.2, Board of Selectmen's announcements, updates, and reports. Sue, do you have anything?
no, I don't.
Okay, thank you. So the first thing is I knew, and I think Sue a couple meetings ago, and I think I'm in the same mindset with her, is that she said we need additional meetings here. She'd be willing to do that, and I thought we might need a couple additional meetings just because there's a lot going on. I think now we might actually, well, it'd be up to the chair to work with you and Sue and me, but I think that we might want to have ones that we do nothing but the budget and this and that, so we can focus, because I think could be some tough
I had
decisions.
actually hoped that next week was going to be solely for budget.
Right, but I do think we still have town, and I agree with that. On the other hand, we still have town business, so I think we need an additional night or day or something. So what I'm trying to say is, for me, and I know Sue said a couple of meetings ago, not to speak for you, is that she was willing to devote some additional time in this crunch. This time of year is crazy without a lot of other stuff going on, but with this added here, the job has to be done. So
I
I'd be
agree,
willing.
but I really would like to have, if you want to call it a special meeting or work session,
Yeah.
primarily for budget,
I agree.
because we spend a lot of time on the regular business
And I
stuff.
agree with that. It's just that I agree with that 100%. On the other hand, we still have to do the regular business. So that I think it's,
Do a quick business meeting,
whatever.
and then the next
I
day
think we
do
need-
the other.
Yeah, I think we need multiples, and whatever. The Jim can talk to all three of us independently, and I think we know we have jobs to do, so let's, I guess, do that, okay?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm just going to go quick here. On updates, for next week's meetings, I would like on the agenda, not an updates next week, because you've been promised me we're going to have an update with a whatever on the records destruction next week.
Yes, sir.
And the other thing is, just so we're clear, there was also property destruction. That's a separate issue. That'll be addressed hopefully on the agenda. And then it's now concerns about work product of a former employee. We are now, without getting into it, you can address next week. I think we're up over 6 figures now, so we need to have update on that, please. And then the other thing, which has been put off and off, we have to get done. I'm only here a couple more meetings. We have to do your eval next week. It should have been done a long time ago. So this is like, I know there's a lot going on, but it should have been done 2 or 3 meetings ago, so.
Yep, actually, on that point, yours is done, Sue's is done, Cindy's is done, but Cindy and I have not sat yet. So for the next meeting, there will be the consolidation of the evaluation for the board's packets.
So it's not my job to tap heels here, but on the other hand, at some point, stuff has to get done.
Yep.
And I understand there's a lot going on, but that needs to be done, because there's only so many more meetings to do that, so.
Gotcha.
And then, I think that the nukes will be out of North Korea before we get to this one, but could we at some point have the policy before the board for the legal use policy, please? All right,
Yeah.
all right, whatever. I know you got a lot, but that's been, I don't know, been there for months, all right, so if we could do that, and that's all I have, so, wow, this is great, can be done. With permission of everybody, 4.4, I would take a motion to review and sign payroll and bills payable warrants out of session.
I move that the board sign and review and sign the payroll and bills payable warrants out of session.
Second, a motion's been made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Let the record show it's unanimous. I would take a motion to end the meeting here, please.
Move to adjourn at, wow,
I know,
6:39?
4 hours early the last time. Seconded, motion's been made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we are now adjourned. Have a nice night, everybody.